Hello, all, and welcome to a new episode of the Horror Countdown Podcast. I'm your host, Don Anelli, and with me on today's show, I have Suzanne Cappelletti.
Greetings.
Hi. Thank you for joining me here today. This is a first for the show. This is our first director top 10, and what better else to start than I think our both personal favorite, or at least one of our personal favorite directors. We're going to be doing our top 10 Dario Argento films.
Oh, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah. We were chatting just a few seconds ago about this off air, but for those that don't know, go ahead and give a little of your background and history with the man and why we're here for tonight's topic.
Yeah, I first was introduced to Dario when Cinemax used to do this summer of 1,000 movies. And literally, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I saw this thing, Suspiria graphic violence. And I'm like, well, okay, all right, let's see what this is all about. About a minute and a half in, I grabbed back in the day, a VHS tape, and threw it in because I'm like, I think I'm going to need to see this more than once. And my grandmother, to the day she died, I think she was pissed that I taped over the guiding lights. So that was where I started with Argento, and there was just something so different about what I was seeing and watching and listening to, because the one thing I've always found incredibly interesting about Argento is the music is a character in the movie as well. The music is so driving in so many of his movies that it actually becomes its own character. And I mean, there's a few films which we'll discuss, just little things that I always found fascinating, and it made me kind of rewatch certain things just to see how it played. But after that, I stumbled into a few other movies, and then I started discovering this little no this genre at the time that wasn't all that well known called giallo, and it's pretty much some would say downhill. I say way uphill ever since that moment.
Mm. Yeah. Personally, for me, he was instrumental in getting me into European horror. I caught his work on IFC back when they played movies. Um, I, I I still remember this vividly. I remember taping them. I remember the slogan for the channel was "Movies Uncut," and they had a whole month, 1 October for Halloween. They had an Italian marathon with Bava and Argento, and they were playing like Black Sunday and Bay of Blood, um, Deep Red, Suspiria, Tenebrae, and it was kind of like a crash course in European and Italian horror cinema. And I have to, I was still young and impressionable at the time, and just getting into the genre as a whole. So they were just like completely far and away, just so different and mesmerizing from what else I was exposed to at the time that I was just such a fan, and everything since has just been a huge love affair with the style, the genre, and everything else. So yeah, I am right there with you. Seeing his work for the first time and just being mesmerized and immersed in what was going on, it was a love affair. So yeah, I'm definitely glad that you and I got together to do this one. This is going to be a lot of fun. So
Oh, and I have a funny story about that uncut that month of October. It was I can't remember what year. I want to say it was like 2004, and they were in Italy. It was Tom Savini there, and a few of the cuts where they were talking about them.
I believe so. Because I remember that there was like buffers, and like they played like adverts in between the movies, because they gave them they weren't like, as soon as the movie ends they play it on the 5, so it's like an hour and 32 minutes, then the next movie would start like, an hour and 35 in. It was like they played it the quarters. So like TCM does, where if it's like an hour and 31 minutes, then they'll do like commercials and special buffers until like an hour and 45 minutes in, and then they'll play the next movie. They used to do it that way. So there was like a couple of commercials and like trailer, like what else was coming up on the channel. Like they'd show the theatrical trailer and then it would be like, coming, playing this month on IFC, stuff like that. So I
Oh
think
yeah,
that there was, yeah, I think there was a couple of stuff they were showing Tom walking around. I think
the
the Profondo,
Coliseum.
yeah, the
Yeah,
Coliseum. I think
I
he visited a couple of landmarks, and I think he even did a little segment at the Profondo Rosso shop, but I can't recall that one for sure.
I was in Italy the month before, and we spent time in Rome. And I am looking at this, and I am screaming at the top of my lungs. How did I not know that he had a museum in Rome? We had an entire day to do whatever we wanted to.
You missed out on the Profondo Rosso shop.
Yes, and I know
Ah,
Luigi Cosi I think he is still the curator there, and I'm almost in tears because we went to the Rome Harley Davidson shop for T-shirts. Like, how did I not know that this was there? But I mean,
uh,
still, the internet was still not the internet we have now, and I never
yeah,
would have thought that there would be a museum dedicated to my favorite director.
yeah. Oh
So,
man, yeah, that's got to be heartbreaking. I mean, especially if you come back and like a month later you see it on TV and bam, it was like right there on you. It's like around the corner almost.
oh, I was so upset, and before I die, I'm making another trip to Rome, and I don't care if I'm there for 2 days. I am going to Profonderoso.
Yeah, that's definitely on my bucket list as well. I'm definitely trying to I'm definitely trying to make a visit there as soon as I can. So
Yeah.
yeah, but for now, let's talk about the actual work that instead of lamenting about what could have been. So
All
let's
right.
start in at number 10.
Okay. And this one, like I said, I'm still not quite sure I'm happy with my number 10, but I have to admit I enjoyed the movie. I think that they gave it up a little too soon, but I still kind of enjoyed the card player from 2004. Once again, we're delving into, our typical giallo territory, but I don't know. There was just something about it that I just kind of enjoyed.
Mm. Yeah, it's been a while. I last revisited it shortly after there was a box set by, I want to say it was Anchor Bay or Blue Underground, and they had five films by Dario Argento, and that was one of them. Because I believe, if I remember correctly, I believe the films were Tenebrae, Phenomena, uh Trauma, Card Player, and Do You Like Hitchcock. I could be wrong. I think those were the five, and I think that shortly after those came out, I think that was when I revisited it. I remember liking it, but yeah, it's post 2000. Argento is one of the few areas that I haven't delved as deeply into as his pre 2000 stuff. So
Yeah, if you get a chance, go and give it a rewatch. And I mean, it's not, an amazing piece of work, but I think for me, this is going to sound strange, but it's maybe lighter fare. It's, like I said, we're bringing in, slowly trying to bring in a more modern take. And I don't know, I actually thought maybe it was the cast that won me over, but I thought it had a charm to it.
I agree. I did like I said, I did remember liking it a lot when I watched it, but it's been a while since I've revisited that one, so I'm definitely intrigued to give it another go. Like I said, it was always one that I always kind of liked, but I've never really revisited it. So, but yeah, I definitely plan to. It was one that I did like, so I'm keen to see where it stands on a new watch. So. Yeah, solid choice there. For for my number 10, I went with actually one of the films in that box set. If I got the titles right, my number 10 is Phenomena.
Oh,
I Yeah, I've always been a fan of this one. I like the way that it plays with several different genres. You have, the classic Argento Giallo setup. The murders happening at the school, and all of the various students are suspects, and the staff play fantastic red herrings. And then you have the secondary storyline about this, this Carrie slash fire starter s storyline about this girl who's got this strange ability to connect with insects. And then, there's this other third storyline about this homicidal monkey running around that, may or may not play a role in the proceedings, and throws another monkey wrench, no pun intended, into the storyline. I've always kind of liked that, and I've always found it really interesting the way that all three of these elements come together. Throw in a great metal soundtrack and some great imagery. That opening decapitation is one of my favorites. I just love the way that it's going to be a running theme. I just love the way that Argento just films murders, and the way that he makes the most grotesque of images just look so appealing. But yeah, I've always been a big fan of this one. I've never really remembered what version of the film this is, just because there's like five different cuts of it.
hmm.
So yeah, whichever version, like I said, is on that box set whichever version is in that box set, I definitely need to grab that and bring it up, because I don't think it holds all of the cuts. I think it's just the one, but yeah, whichever version that one is, I've always really enjoyed it. But like I probably bump it up if I could find out what version is the definitive one, and do a deep dive, and figure out which of the three or four cuts of the film are better. But whichever one I have is probably I'd put it at number 10, but it's Phenomena.
Well, it's funny. Going into number nine is
Uh-huh.
Phenomena, but for 1985. And once again, you pretty much nailed all of the points. And it's like that opening decapitation. It seems like it's happening in real time, but real time has been slowed down. And it's just, and you're right, there is just an absolute beauty in the way that it's done. It doesn't, I mean, and this is going to be me, I love physical effects. I absolutely love them. And it was just perfect.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, one of my favorite times I ever watched this movie was with NFW and Willis, because Willis loved that monkey.
I remember that was one of the few times that I just could not control myself, and I was almost gasping for
Oh,
air
you were
laughing.
there! Oh
Yeah,
my god!
yep.
But
Yeah, that was one of the few times Nudie invited me on for something other than a shark movie.
oh
Yeah.
god, I was dying. I think I had two beers and I just went straight to vodka because I'm like, this is just gonna be a shit show. But yeah, I
Oh,
always
yeah,
enjoyed it.
yeah,
And
and
the
then
first
everybody making
oh
fun of the everybody doing the Muppet theme song. Yeah, that was I was just almost inconsolable that day. I was just
I know.
yeah, that was a classic recording. I could not just I loved it.
Oh, I know. It was, I think, one of my favoriteest episodes we ever did because everybody was losing it. And one of the other things about it, I remember because the first version I ever saw was the US cut called Creepers.
Hmm.
So, and I know, actually, I think it was either Arrow or Synops did a really stunning version of it a couple of years ago. I'll have to
Hmm.
go look at the label, but I think that is basically the premiere cut. And for Creepers, they cut out a few minutes. They it was, I don't even know why they cut anything, but it may have been a time crunch because mid '80s everything had to be an hour and a half long. Didn't matter, hour and a half, over and done with. Now, if everything is not at least 2 hours and 10 minutes, it's just not worth anybody's time, apparently.
Hmm.
But yeah, number nine for me, phenomenon.
Cool. Yeah. Um, for my number nine, this is one that I do admit I've gotten a little closer to on rewatches, but I I went with Inferno. So initially, this was always the one that I always said was his weakest pre 2000 film. Um, I I have grown to admit it's definitely grown on me over the years. Initially, I think it was the fact that it was so dragged out and so long. But I love the artistry of it. I think it's one of the more appreciated storylines that he has. I think in terms of weighing this in terms of the Three Mothers trilogy, I think this is probably the most coherent of the storylines, and it's something that I never really picked up on initially, but it's part of what appeals to me now with the film. And you've got two fantastic set pieces. One, unfortunately, I can't attribute to him, but whoever did that underwater scene, and I'm willing to bet that it's Bava who did it, just
Uh,
based
it
on
was it was Lamberto Bava that did it.
yeah, I figured. I thought that was him, but yeah, that underwater diving sequence where the girl has to retrieve the necklace, I believe, necklace or pendant or whatever it is that she drops, and dives under the water and has to pull it out before this skeleton comes, this rotting body, or I'm sorry, body comes floating after her. That sequence is fantastic, and like you said, I believe that's Bava who did that instead of Argento. But yeah, I've actually also really enjoyed the finale. I mean, that witch reveal when she walks through the mirror, that is a thing of beauty. Overall, I've come to appreciate it more, but when I initially saw it, I always thought it was the weakest of his pre 2000 films. But my number nine is Inferno.
All right, my number eight, and this one is one it should really be pushed up a lot higher than it is, but it's it's just it's the one I probably should have revisited because when I was making all of my notes, remembering scenes from it, I really should have given it a rewatch, and I just ran out of time to do that. Is Cat o' Nine Tails.
Hmm.
It's 1971. And I just, once again, this is where the full Giallo rules apply because you don't actually have a detective. You've got a blind man that likes crossword puzzles and an investigative reporter digging into these murders around a genetics lab. And it's once again, the whole thing is you feel like you're right in the middle of everything. It was just the way it was filmed. So when they're delving around and you're just sitting there going, "Oh my God, look! Look! Would you please look behind you?" But it's one of those where I really felt like I was thrust into the action, And it's just one of the this, like I said, I'm gonna end up turning this on before I go to bed tonight and smiling.
Yeah, I've I've come to appreciate Cat o' Nine Tails recently. Arrow ended up giving me the 4K version of it, which oh, that is a thing of beauty. I love it. It looks amazing and it sounds better than I remember it being. I never really remember that as being like one of the better Argento scores, but I definitely come to appreciate it more. It slipped to my honorable mentions just because I don't think it's the most thought out of his mysteries. Uh, I'm not necessarily a fan of where it goes with the revelation of the killer and how, why he's doing what he's doing, but no, I agree. It's a lot more fun than a lot of people give it credit for. I do like it a lot more than I did, but yeah, that one's on my honorable mentions. So
Yeah, it was. It seemed a bit slapdash and rushed because of the trilogy. But
yeah.
once again, it was one of those that I remember. It just you're put in the middle, and yeah, that next Cat of Nine Tails that's going on my shelf in about a week. It is a well, I've got an old DVD copy,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
that needs an upgrade.
Yeah, I mean that the 4K version is fantastic. There's a lot of good extra features on there too. So
Oh, I can't wait for that one.
yeah, I think it's actually my favorite of their 4K upgrades. Because I have that one, I have Bird, and I have the Deep Red upgrades on 4K. So
Oh my
it,
God,
yeah,
they
and that
they've done such an amazing job.
well, like I said, I mean, out of the three, I actually like the cat version the most. I think that's the best of the three. So
Oh wow.
yeah. Um, but for my number eight, I actually went with the next entry in the Animal trilogy. I went with Four Flies on Gray Velvet. So this was always the one that it was the toughest to track down, just because it was the one that was never really readily available on home video for reasons I was never really able to figure out. I was always able to find the other ones pretty easily, but this was always the one that kind of was the lone holdout. And I'm actually really glad that I managed to finally track it down because I really appreciate it. It's really fun and lively. There's some fantastic red herrings in this, and it's a much deeper and more involved storyline than I ever really expected from Argento. Just because he was rushing these out at such a frantic pace. I mean, this was like the third in 2 years. So to see that this was as strong as it was a lot of fun. I think it's probably his funniest film. I know it's not necessarily one that you really think of with Argento, but a lot of it to me is you have I think it's Bud Spencer from the Spencer and Hill Trinity spaghetti westerns from that time period. He plays a big role in this, and he's really good in it. And that finale, that finale is just a work of art that I cannot celebrate enough. No spoilers for those that haven't seen it, just because it's like I said, not as easily available to find as the other entries in the Animal trilogy. But yeah, this is a lot of this is a lot of fun, and definitely one that really needs to be exposed to more, because I think it's the most underseen of the three for some reason.
I
But
know. I know. I ended up I had like two bootleg copies of it, and then I think it was 88 films. They released a handful of the German releases, thank God for an all region player.
mm,
And um Diabolic DVD, which really needs to get more business from me because they literally my entire collection is stocked because of Diabolic DVD. But I saw it. They only had 3 copies, and I was lucky enough to be, well, basically number one to get my order in. And like I said, I do not know why this does. Everything else has got a much wider release,
I know, yeah.
and it just seems unfair because we'll see where this movie might pop up in the rest of my list.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I didn't. I figured you'd be a fan of this one, but yeah, if you're higher than me, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's move to number 7.
And this one, once again, it's this is was a very, very hard list to put together for me. It really took some work, and once again, this movie should be way higher up on my list, but it's kind of sitting where it sits. And that actually, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to change this list right now. We're going to make you there. And at number 7, I just changed it. We're going to go with opera.
Hmm.
I really, really enjoy opera. I think it's one of those movies that it. I find the storyline to be very stage fright, but
Yeah.
it's one of those, but you can't take away from the imagery. It is absolutely from frame one to last frame a stunning movie to watch. And this one, like I said, I had it a little higher on the list, but talking about a few things, I'm like, no, those two got to get swapped right now. I, they did something that I hate when movies do. They toss you, and God, I don't want it to sound like a spoiler. If you've not seen it, please plug your ears for about 30 seconds. I hate the false ending.
Yeah.
That's always been one of those pet peeves of mine. It's like, and I get it. I mean, I do get it in some cases, but you automatically know it's not the real ending, and then you have to sit there and watch, some happy fucking scene, and basically Jason comes out of the lake. But this one, like I said, and this is surprisingly, my husband is not. He likes Suspiria, but he's always, from the time I met him, he always likes a good witch movie. And I put it on one afternoon. I thought he was doing other stuff. It started. He came and sat down. I'm like, no, I'll stop this. And he's like, no, 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 just let it go. And he actually, once again, I think it's just one of those movies that is so incredibly visually stunning that you're sucked in whether you're into it or not. So yeah, it's and like I said, it's his mid-80s stuff. He does get, I don't want to say commercial because this was done in 87, but I got, for me, I don't know. It just I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot. But I think for me, it's more one of the more eye candy of his movies, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah. I'll explain in a little bit because I have I have opera on my list as well. So
Okay.
yeah. We'll talk about that in a bit. But for my number 7, I kind of cheated. I had to do this, but I went with Jennifer slash Peltz, his 2 entries in the Masters of Horror series. Um, I kind of cheated just because I felt it was a little unfair to do both of them, seeing as how they're both an hour long and not necessarily full feature, 90-minute or plus efforts like the rest of his career. But I had both of them just because they were both the standouts in each season for me. Um, Jennifer was actually my second favorite of the first season. I think Cigarette Burns is still my favorite of that one. But
No, Cigarette
Pelt,
Burns is my favorite of that season,
yeah,
followed by, oh God, no, it's probably Cigarette Burns. Oh, Incident on a Mountain Road.
it's my number 3. Yeah, that was my three. It was cigarette burns, Jennifer, and then incident on and off a mountain road. Yeah, that was my top three in the first season. Like I said, Peltz was my favorites in the second season. So yeah, he was definitely a highlight for both. Definitely earned his stripes for being a master at that time. Just because I think this was in between Do You Like Hitchcock and Giallo. I think those
Yeah.
because yeah, these were the two that he did in between. Definitely earned his stripes. Definitely provided a lot of fun with both. Jennifer, I was actually kind of surprised that he went with a more psychological route than most of his other films, just because it wasn't as you know, it wasn't a traditional giallo slasher that he was usually known for. It was much more, the guy's obsession and his, just driven to her for very little reasoning, but it just paid off, and I loved it. And then Pels was just absolutely over the top, and I loved it. The idea is again something that he never really played with. He never really played with like overt supernatural horror. He never really, it was like a cursed item and like a cursed object, and whoever touched it met like grisly ends. But then, eh, I loved Pelts. That one was so much fun. Rest in peace, Meatloaf. You had a fantastic role in that, and I loved what you did with it. But yeah, I had a hard time separating them, so I had to cheat a little. So my number seven is the Masters of Horror entries. Like I said, two highlights, and definitely worthy of his inclusion in such a prestigious program.
Oh, I have to, you know, Peltz is of all of them. Peltz is so extremely important to me. I'm a huge fan of the man who wrote the story, F. Paul Wilson. I met him. I totally fangirled all over him. It was so not pretty. I have a picture. We're both really, really drunk together. It was the happiest. It was a very, very happy night for me. And if you ever read the short story, buy whatever publication it's in because whatever profit he makes off pelts all gets donated to animal causes.
Mm. Yeah,
So,
that's absolutely an important trait to mention. Yeah.
and that author is F. Paul Wilson. So, yeah. And he's also my second favorite writer of all time ever, anyway. So I just got to plug that too. But when I met Meatloaf, he did a con here last summer. And I actually had the privilege of meeting Meatloaf. Didn't get much of a story about it because he was talking about Jim Steinman, and it just we weren't going to sway from that topic once he was talking. But I actually had a chance to meet him. He actually looked at me, looked at the picture because I got a picture signed from Peltz, and he's like, "You don't look like that kind of girl." I'm like, "Well, don't judge a book by its cover."
Yeah. Oh man, that would have been fun to get his experiences on that. Or I mean, even just the general story from him from him overall. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, I had a hard time separating them. So my number seven. Let's move on to number six.
All right, and number six, clocking in, is Inferno.
Ah.
And once again, this is, I mean, Argento directed this. He was very unhealthy at the time. He was in a hospital bed. And most of the principal directing was done by Lamberto Bava. And I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in the IMDb credits, you'll see that Mario Bava was also on hand as well. And another interesting fact, once again, the music is such a character in a lot of his movies that Keith Emerson was making up the soundtrack playing while they were filming. And I'm like, that is kind of cool. Wait, that's really, really cool. But the underwater sequence, that just completely just sucks you in. And once again, we're in we're in light supernatural because it's the second in the witch movies, but it's just a once again a beautiful movie, and it's so vivid, and I think that is more of Bava's influence, because when you go and watch any of Lamberto or even Mario Bava's movies, it's all about, color and brightness. And yeah, I so love Inferno.
Um, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm done.
Oh,
It's
okay. Yeah.
we
I
pretty
mean,
much mostly covered it, but
yeah.
yeah, those were the only other two things. But I really even like Lee McCloskey, who is basically in like what teenage sex comedies for most of his career, and he's actually in a more serious role. And I just found him once again in all those comedies that I watched with all of my stupid friends. I found him to actually be kind of interesting. He he seemed to really put himself out there while he playing that part. But yes, Inferno once again, it is eye candy. And I agree, the story is kind of it's story light, but with once again the music and the actors really push you through this. So you're basically getting a more visual story than you probably should have gotten in the first place if Dario had not been in a hospital bed, because I know he was really very rigid when it came to directing. I think he was that enabled this to maybe be a little better than it should have been.
I mean, yeah. I've said my piece on Inferno, so I mean, yeah, you know where I stand on that one. So
Hmm.
yeah, I definitely agree. All right. For my number six, I kind of like I said, talk about this later. I went with opera. Um, yeah. I again just a fantastic setup here. I love this inclusion of making something feel far grander than it is, because it adds that classical element to it with the opera setting. And like you said, it feels very much like stage fright, but I think this one's the better of the two. I would say stage fright is probably the more watchable, just because one, it's a little shorter, and it doesn't have that ending, which uh Dario, what were you thinking, man? You had us.
I know,
You
I
had the classic.
know,
You had the classic right there. You tacked on 20 extra minutes for what? I don't get it.
nothing.
Yeah, I
No.
don't get it. That 20 minutes. Ugh. If he would have ended it at if he would have ended it at the first ending, he has me in this. This is in my top five. He has
Oh
me in the
yeah.
top five. It's a classic. I mean, you've got two just absolutely majestic set pieces. I mean, that tracking shot of the dove. Why the hell is that in there? But that just it looks so beautiful. And you've
That's
got the
where
key
it should have ended. It should have
right.
stopped.
Exactly. Ah, you mean you end it right there, and it's just beauty. It's perfection. But then like you tack on 20 minutes, and then okay, you've got my all-time favorite set piece that he's ever done, the keyhole sequence. That thing is just a work of art that I've never seen committed to film, and yeah, you tack on 20 minutes for no reason, but yeah, up until then, this is just a classic. Dario on all hitting every cylinder that he can, and a grossing mystery, fantastic setup. I mean, even something so simple as just that the pins under the eyes. God, that's just a
That's
simple idea.
brutal.
It's such a
It's
simple idea, but I mean, the visual of it and the idea behind it, it's just incredible. And you have all of these elements working together, but God, that extra 20 minutes. I mean,
You know how many of my friends have those tattoos of the eyes with the pins?
Oh, I can't imagine. I know a lot of friends on my timeline, just in general, that are horror fans. They have that cover tattooed on them somewhere as like, their Argento piece, or they have the witch from Suspiria tattooed on them as like their Argento thing. I've always
Mhm.
found that those are the two pieces. It's either the witch from Suspiria or it's the eyes from Opera as their Argento one. That's like
Yeah,
their Argento tattoo is one or the other. So yeah, I know that it's like one of the biggest images that he's ever created. So
yeah, I know. Well, you know what tattoo I have on my arm.
oh yeah.
So that was mine. And actually, I actually have been stopped at cons that people that I guess I'm Facebook friends with through other groups are like, I know you. So I actually get recognized because of my tattoo.
Awesome. Yeah. But yeah, number 6 for me is opera. So let's move to our top 5.
Oh, and this is where actually now my top five is my top five. I have no questions about my top five, and I have no questions about the order of my top five. Maybe a little bit, but we're just going to go with it. But my number five is the bird with crystal plumage. This was honestly, this was probably one of the I did not catch this because this one for a little bit was kind of hard to find. And then I discovered the Blue Underground catalog, and I was pretty much set. But this was basically the his introduction to the Black Glove Killer. And he stated many times in any of the scenes where the black glove and you see nothing but the black glove, that was him. So it just seemed like he wanted to reach out and touch everybody and not in a friendly manner. But once again, you've got these beautiful countryside Italy sets. I mean, it's just everything. The opening kill. I mean, everything is so pristine white, and then you get that brutal killing in the beginning, and it is brutal. It lasts more than a couple of minutes, and you just see everything is in white and then just this slashing in red and slashing in more red. And he did a twist at the end in this one. You know it, I know it. But I think he was one of the first that actually did that in film. So
Yeah.
I truly do believe that this was the this well, obviously this is the movie that started everything. This is my number five, and he everything he did in Bird set the tone for everything else he ever did. He would pull without even realizing he pulled it. You know, like I said, the black glove, these some of these murders just being so stark, and just seeing those brutal slashes. I this like I said, this was the birth, and he this set the tone for me. Every other giallo I've ever watched, I have to admit, I do compare to the bird with crystal plumage.
Nice. Yeah. I'll mention that one in a few minutes because it's on my list. So yeah, I'll speak my piece about that one then. But yeah, for my number 5, I realize this one may be a strange pick, but this is one that I've come to appreciate over the years. I went with the Stendhal syndrome. So, like I said, I realize this one's kind of an obscure, kind of a off the wall pick, but ever since I first saw it, I was absolutely mesmerized by it. Some of it, I would say hands down, some of his most gorgeous scenery. Some of it, yes, computer generated, granted, but I'll let it slide just because the technology was so new and it ages about you know ever since the end of the conversation here, I think the CGI looks outdated, but yeah, it's a fun mystery. I love what they do with the first half of this one. The second half is a little bit of a letdown, but overall, I love what he does with this one. Ozia actually can act, not just strip naked for her father, but um, yeah, she has a great performance in this. I love the way that she comes off. The actual syndrome that this is based on is, I would say, one of the most intriguing and interesting medical conditions I've ever heard. And to exploit it as a horror film the way that he does is actually quite ingenious. And it leads to some of the more interesting set pieces. Just her trying to track the killer down, and coming across this condition at the most obscure and inappropriate times. But yeah, like I said, the second half is not as interesting. But I still like the psychological aspects of it. I still think it's a fun idea. Probably would have appreciated had they kept the killer alive just a little bit longer, just so that way you can have a little bit more fun with it. But yeah, this one is one that really worked for me, and I I know it's a kind of an odd one to play so high, but he had far more tricks up his sleeve. I definitely liked where he went with this one. So my number five is Stendhal syndrome.
Yeah, I actually toyed with that one, and because once again, I agree with you, but for me, the second half was such a letdown that it was more of an honorable mention for me.
Mm,
But I agree, and it's something I'm going to delve into when we jump up to number three about something that he toys with. I don't really want to call it quack science, but in this case, it's some very obscure thing that, you know, maybe five people had heard of when the film was
yeah,
released.
yeah,
But no,
yeah.
I
Like I said,
agree.
like I said, it's just such an interesting and weird thing to make as a to bring it into connection with these killings, and uh, to do so, I think it's really interesting.
Oh, it is. I think of all of his films, I think this is one of the more interesting topics he's explored.
Okay,
Okay. All right,
so
sweet.
all right, so with that, let's head to our number four.
Okay, and this from four to one, these are my four favorite movies in order. And number four is Tenebrae. I can't even tell you how much I love this movie. I I honestly, it's one of more brutal movies. The kills are incredibly brutal. The the really odd little storyline with the red shoes, which I'm not really going to dive into that much. And the one thing this movie absolutely needed was Daria Nickelodeon in it, because she added just that little bit of lightness that this story needed, because it is harsh. I honestly, of everything he's ever done, I think this is the most brutal thing he ever did. And you're almost and you even get that like kind of splash of cold water in your face shock at who the actual killer is. This is just one of it. I honestly think, as much as I love his movies from beginning to end, I honestly think that this was probably his most perfect movie.
Yeah. Well, I'll touch on that one in just a second. Listening to you and looking at my list, I have a feeling that we're gonna almost be step by step. I think we're just gonna have the order switched going forward. Because my number four is Bird. Yeah, my number four is Bird. I mean, I've always said that this is one of, if not the best debut horror films ever. It's certainly the most technically accomplished debut horror films. Maybe Ari Aster or Flanagan can lay claim to that one, but I love Bird. I think it's his greatest mystery. If you lay out the initial incidents, all the clues that come forward, and figuring out the killer's identity, I think this is the best mystery. And absolutely, oh, what a fantastic opening! It's just so shocking and so striking, and how it plays into the twist at the end. Oh, that was such a stroke of genius. I admit, when I first saw it, my jaw dropped.
Oh, I
I
know.
w- I was so pegged. I had the killer's identity the first time I saw it, and then he pulls the switch, and the switch, unlike a lot of films, when you see this trick pulled off, this switch works perfectly, because I was so sure I had this killer pegged, and then all of a sudden you get that reveal, and you get that little smirk, and everything was like, holy crap, this he
I
tricked me.
know.
And yeah, I mean, the first time you see it, I love watching and hearing people react to this window the first time, because almost every single time everyone did the same thing. They swore they had the killer pegged, and then he pulls the reveal, and it completely shocks them. But it, the way that he pulls it off, and he has this fantastic mystery set up around it. It's amazing. Yeah, Bird for me, it's an absolute classic. To see that it formulated the genre. I've always heard that Blood and Black Lace was the one that started the genre, but to see that this popularized the genre, it's an absolute no-brainer to see where everything came from. Just it's such an amazing film. Number four for me easily was Bird.
Yeah,
So,
with Bart, and you mentioned Blood and Black Lace. Yeah, it for me, and believe I'm a big Bava fan, but I also found Blood and Black Lace to be a beautiful film, but empty.
yeah, um,
And I don't want to say
yeah,
anything bad about Mario Bava, but
yeah,
I watched it 3 or 4 times because I the first time I watched, I'm like, I feel like I'm missing something.
yeah. No, I was the same way. I don't know why, but I just don't care about the killers, and I know we're meant to be. But I know, not to, dive too deeply into it, but knowing who the killers are at the end, it just feels a little empty, like you said. It just feels underdeveloped.
Yeah, like I said, it was a beautiful film,
Oh
but it was
yeah,
empty.
yeah,
And I mean, I've watched it probably maybe 3 or 4 times, more than twice, definitely,
yeah,
because I've heard people just talk, and I'm like, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm missing. Let me sit down. Let me kick everybody out of my house and turn all the lights off. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I didn't watch it at the right time of day. Maybe I was in the wrong mood. But I've always just found that movie to be completely empty.
yeah.
And Bird, like I said, that was I just pretty much wow. That reveal, and you're right. You are sitting there and you're just like, and everything adds up. It wasn't just kind of this twist thrown in at the end. It was well thought out. And once again, you get your red herrings thrown at you all the way through. It is just, it's amazing. It's just amazing. Well, yeah, it's
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah. That moves to number three.
All right, number three, we've already talked about a little bit, but for me, number three was Four Flies on Gray Velvet.
Ooh, wow! I didn't suspect it this high. Wow.
Once again, I think
Oh,
maybe,
the false science claim from Stendhal. Okay, now that makes sense. Okay.
yeah.
Uh,
And I mean, I noticed every once in a while he'll throw one of those quack science things in. Once again, you had this misleading storyline about the Genetic Institute
yeah.
in Cat o' Nine Tails. But no, you get the most coolest piece of quack science ever in this movie. It for me, once again, it is from it is the most entertaining of all of his films because I mean it's literally a fun fucking movie. The movie is a fun movie to watch. And once again, you got this amazing soundtrack to go with it. And this just I do. I love this movie. I love the quack science. And if you don't know what the quack science is, just go watch it. It,
I know.
it's
It's so stupid.
oh, it
It's
is.
it's so stupid.
It is
I
completely stupid, but it works. It
I that's what I was
so
gonna
works.
say. Yeah, I was gonna say, how in the hell does that come off as believable? But it does. Yeah.
It is. It is. It's so good. I actually it's part of my tattoo on my arm.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen it, but I've seen parts of it, I think. But if you're saying that there's part of it, if that's also part of it, then I don't think I've ever seen a full photo of it. So,
Oh yeah, no, there's I have four flies on my arm. Unfortunately, gray was not going to translate, so we stuck with the Suspiria 70s Italian blood red.
oh, oh, okay. Maybe I have seen it because I remember seeing that spot on there on one of the pictures. I think it was one of your convention pictures. I think I saw that. So maybe that's what that was. Okay, I'd probably have to look at it again or something. But
Yeah, because I was like, what do we do with the four flies? And he was like, well, I mean, gray was not going to work. And he was like, let's stick with the, Italian 70s stage blood. Like, that works for me. And it's funny, what my muscle kept twitching when he was trying to attach one of the flies. So one of the flies is backward, which is kind of funny because what my sign on to Skype is fly, and I'm like, yeah, the backward fly that works. That actually fits well me.
yeah, wow, yeah, great choice. I mean, and like I said, why is this one so hard to get a hold of?
I know it. Like I said, I had a couple of bootleg copies until I got this copy from '88. And once again, thank you, All Region Blue DVD player, because it was the only copy available. And then Blue Underground did a copy, and it vanished as quick as it was there. But
Yeah,
this one, oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, I was just gonna say, yeah, I never even heard of the Blue Underground version. I didn't even know they did one.
Yeah, I mean and once again, I'm on DVD. There has not been a blue. Actually, you got the 4K. I need that.
No, I don't have this one. I just have Bird, Cat, and Deep Red.
Yeah, well, somebody somewhere needs to do something with Four Flies on Gray Velvet because it is. If this was a little more widely available, I think a lot of people would find a love for it. God knows I do. I love this movie. I love it so very much. It's one of those. It's we'll talk about it in another movie, but there's like I said, there is just a charm to it. It's a little bit, once again, a little lighter, but the story is fantastic. The quack science twist is it's fucking beautiful. So that's how I feel about Four Flies on Grey Velvet.
Yeah, and like I said, it was on my list, so I'm definitely right there with you. So, my number three, as was mentioned, is Tenebrae. So yeah, like I said, I think we're probably going to be in lockstep from here on out. Just I think we'll probably have the order reversed, but
Oh, very possibly.
yeah, like I said, just based on our list so far, I think we'll be close. But for Tenebrae, yeah, you absolutely hit the nail on the head with this one. This is a slasher kills in a giallo setup, and it's brutal. It's over the top, but it still has the giallo flair. And the one thing that stuck out with me, and this was the first time I remember watching this one, because this was actually the first of the films I saw. This was my introduction to Dario. Um, when I first saw this one, again, this was the one where I did not see the twist coming, but it works so beautifully. And the reasoning, the setup, everything about it just works. And I'm not talking about the false ending, I'm talking about the twists
Yeah,
involving the killer. Because the false ending is really stupid. I don't like the way that he sets that up, but I love the twist involved in the false ending. And the twist here is, I think, pulled off absolutely fantastic. I love the way he does it, because the thing is, you don't know it's a twist ending until the actual ending, and it's beautifully played off, and it works so well. And then, poor John Saxon.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, at least you're involved in a Dario film, but I would have loved to have seen you there alongside Giuliano Gemma. That would have been a fun sight to see the two of them stand side by side together at the end. But I mean, at least Saxon visited Italy and Dario. I mean, he visited Mario a couple of years earlier with Girl Who Knew Too Much, but I mean, at least he got to Dario as well. So I'll give you that. But yeah, Tenebrae. Like I said, my first Argento film, my number three, and I will say this: even though if you know me, you know that if I was ranking these, the order on this list is not the order by which watch them as entertainment pieces. Because entertainment pieces, this is my number three film of all time, just like it's number three on my list.
Mhm.
But in terms of our Argento's work, I'm switching around a couple of the films. So I think that's going to be the difference. Because in terms of entertainment, this is my third favorite film of all time. Just it just works perfectly. I mean, like you said, it's pure entertainment from start to finish. But in terms of an Argento film, it's my number three because I'm changing the parameters of how I rank these. So I think that brings us to number two, and I think we'll have the order switched. So
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure we are, judging by
yeah,
our list so far. So my number two is Deep Red,
mhm.
Profenderoso. I once again, this movie is absolutely stunning. Once again, we have one of, I'm just going to talk about a couple of scenes, but that decapitation. I mean, and he, once again, we do have just a teeny tiny itty bitty little touch of the supernatural with the psychic. And he's got David Hemming, who every movie I've ever seen David Hemming in, he elevates the movie to such a level that you, it's, he, this could have been a terrible movie, which of course it obviously isn't, but David Hemming seems to add class. I don't know another word to describe how he is. And this is one of those movies that literally has so much going on with every, even, peripheral characters. It is, it's, I actually have a hard time talking about it because there's so many little things. But once again, I'm just going to talk about the deft hand of Dario, the the start kills. Once again, you do have some particularly brutal kills in this movie, and the one thing I noticed on subsequent viewings is how predominant that black glove is. And Dario really, really needed to make some form of impression here with that black glove. And it just seems like every murder was just, it was the exclamation point on the end of the sentence because that's all you saw was this black glove. So Deep Red, I once again, it's one of these movies. There are so many different threads to it. It is almost, it's very hard to talk about the threads. But yeah, this, I have to admit, this is my number two, and this is the movie when I just need something on in the background. This is kind of my go-to movie. So that's
Mm.
number two, Deep Red.
All right, nice. My number two, and if you want to talk about this one with me, go right ahead. It's Suspiria. Um, so this one was it took me a while. I don't have the attachment you did to it. It took me a while to appreciate it, but I'm so glad that I gave this one multiple viewings because every time I watch this one, I grow to it more and more. It starts off just so perfectly. I mean, that first 20 minutes I think is just a masterclass. There's everything going on in there. You not only just have this wonderful short little compacted horror story, but you also have, just him at the top of his game with everything. I mean, you've got the red lighting in the cab ride through the forest. You've got the howling wind and rain just creating this majestic cacophony alongside this absolutely thunderous soundtrack just absolutely blaring in the background. And then you have, I have no idea how he pulled this off, one of the greatest kills in the history of the genre. And every time I try to describe what's going on to people, they think I'm just making stuff up on the spot. Just the way it builds, the way it escalates, the way it grows and grows and grows, and then it just ends in one of the most striking images I've ever seen on screen. The one thing, and I'll say this, and the reason why it's my number two, I always figured that this movie was longer than it was based on the stupid tagline that I originally watched it under.
Oh
And it's
yeah.
the stupid tagline when I originally watched it was, the only thing scarier than the first 12 minutes of this movie is the next 92. And that prepared me to believe that the film was longer than it was. So when I found out that the film was only 92 minutes instead of, like an hour and 45, I was ticked off because I thought I was lied to based on how long the film was supposed to be. That's what kept me from liking this movie as much as I did the first time I watched it.
Oh, the funny thing talking about the soundtrack, um, and I also saw it in a documentary, but I went to see Goblin, and of course I had to pay for the VIP because I'm like, yeah, I want to meet that. I want to meet Claudio. And I had a super short sleeve shirt on. He yanked me out of the VIP line, brought me up so he could take pictures of my tattoo. And he was telling me when they were, filming that everybody's lines were, he had everybody talking in their native language, and he was going to dub all that shit in after. But he had the band, well, they were filming, playing loud, and I'm like, okay, that adds another level to it.
Yeah, that I heard that story a couple of years after I watched it, and it made sense. Because as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, I've got to watch the movie again and figure out if that's true. See if I can figure out if there's any kind of truth to that. And you can notice everybody just looks like they're unhinged, and they're for that. You can definitely tell. Yeah, I definitely think that that just adds to it because it's absolutely just unhinged.
Oh, and everybody's acting like they are, I mean, literally being just inundated with these just like booming sounds because everybody, even walking around, they're always constantly looking nervous, looking over their shoulders.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, the only reason why I it took me as long to warm up to it was because I thought it was longer than it actually was, just because of the tagline. Like, just because of that tagline, and I was like, "Oh, it's already over. I thought this was supposed to be longer, and that was the only reason what took me so long to warm up to it.
That is hilarious, and I can't wait to tell everybody. But the one thing I noticed, probably, and I do that literally once a year, I pop in my pre motherfucking ordered copy of the Synopsis restoration. And it's like certain little things jump out at me. And one of my friends and I had a really long conversation about it. Is toward the end, the flowers on the wall.
Mm.
And it was something that was, mumbled at her about the flowers. And all of a sudden,
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's kind of like his giallo influence. I think that's kind of one of the striking points with that one is that the way it builds up to what the reveal is actually inside the dance hall. I think that's a total giallo thing. I love the way that that builds up because it's something you notice at the very beginning because it's one of the first lines that you hear and it pays off at the very end. I mean, that's a total giallo thing for me.
Mentioned, I can't take any credit for this whatsoever, even though I wish I could. But after she kills the witch, they're like, watch. And it seems like she is very powerful and the house is shoving her out the door as everything starts crumbling around her, that it's pushing her out. Just a random observation from somebody far smarter than me, obviously.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally I love that ending. I think it's part of his giallo influence. Just the payoff with, like you said, with the flower thing. You
Hmm.
see, you get that, the early clue at the very beginning of the film, and it pays off at the very end. I mean, it's like a total giallo setup. So, I mean, yeah. If you haven't noticed, that's your number one. So,
Yeah, we pretty much covered my number one.
yeah. I mean, for me, my number one was Deep Red. And I do want to preface this by saying that I have Deep Red at number one only through the international version, not the director's version. As much as I love the director's version, the international cut, the one that's 2 hours and 10 minutes, I think, that has the English and the Italian scenes in it. The straight American version is the one that I prefer, and I love that. It's a fantastic setup. The kills are amazing. The soundtrack is fantastic. If we were ranking this based on the director's cut, I would actually flip them, and I would be like you. I'd have Deep Red 2 and Suspiria at 1. But if we have the international version of Deep Red, I'm going with that one over the director's cut, just because I think the director's cut it feels its length a little bit more than the international version does. The
Oh,
extra
I
scenes,
agree.
yeah, the extra scenes, as much as it enhances the relationship between David and Daria, I think it just makes the film drag.
I think it,
So
it 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 kind of muddies it a little bit.
yeah, like I said, I understand why some of that was cut out for the international version, and that's why I have the international version. If we're ranking this based on that, the international version of Deep Red is number one. If it's the director's version of Deep Red, then I'm switching it, and I'm like you, I have Deep Red at two and Suspiria at one. But yeah, like I said, the international version of Deep Red is number one. It feels faster. It's a lot more, straightforward and to the point. It's not as I mean, like you said, it feels like it muddies the water a little bit, but I still like it, but it's just it doesn't hit for me the same way the shorter international version does. So
No, I agree because I've seen both, and what I love about Deep Red is basically you're taken on a 90-minute ride and there's no stops. When you add in the extra scenes, it just starts dragging where it in places where it definitely shouldn't drag.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I mean, we can be here all night discussing that, but yeah, no, that's like I said, that's the reason why if we were talking the director's cut version, I'd switch them. But yeah, I can't agree more. These are, one and two for a reason. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, but yeah, this was definitely as much fun as I figured. So yeah, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I really appreciate it.
Oh no, I was so happy. I really haven't gone off on any Argento tangents lately, and I finally got to go off on one, and I'm very very happy. I got to discuss a lot of things about his movies that I love, and talking about somebody who has an appreciation as well. That just made the conversation even more rewarding.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It's always fun to talk about him and his work. So, for those that don't know, let everyone know where they can find you and everything about you online.
Oh wow! Well, I'm on the NFW podcast, which I'm sure you all hate. And I do the Cinema Beef with Gary, and we're supposed to be recording our Peter Bogdanovich show tomorrow. We're doing Targets and the Last Picture Show. And I'm usually hanging around Facebook, posting pointless memes and telling everybody what I'm watching.
Nice. All right. So, everything will be linked in the show notes down below for you to check out and find quickly. So, go ahead and give her a follow because I mean, if you can find that NFW show, I hope that thing's somewhere online. I'll definitely link that one in there. That one was a blast.
Oh yeah,
But
so you have to link the Phenomena show. I will find it. I will make Nudie find it for me.
yeah, definitely. So until next time, like I said, thank you for joining us, and we will see you with a new topic.